जय श्री श्री गुरु गंधार्विक गिरिधारी शिष्य राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मरण मोहन जू की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टतर शतश्मल भक्ति विरांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टतर शतश्मल भक्ति विरांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टतर शतश्मल शिल भक्ति विरांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टतर शतश्मल शिल भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टतर शतश्मल शिल भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टतर शतश्मल शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट महाभागवत शिल गोक्षरस बाबूजी महाराज की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट शिल सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। निखिल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम शिल जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपनु गौरिया गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल पतिदास रघुनाथ शार गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम अचय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदाते गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज की जय। श्री मुन देवी गंग देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्रीनिताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। Dandava pranams, Indira Mataji. Sorry I'm late today. And Prajumna Prabhu and Rup Manjari Didi. There you go. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha Nitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna chaitanya namne gauratishe namaha. Guruve gaurachandraya radhikaya tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tar Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahaka Tara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Bhinedustam Sarvabhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Shrinvatang Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridantasto Yabhadrani Vyoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tavai vasmi na jivami tvaya vina iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayamam charanantikam bhaktya vihina aparada lakshai kshiptashtaka ditaranga madhe kripa maitam sharanam prapanna vrinde namaste charanaravindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Today our reading's only 4,000 words. Some days we've read 6,300 words, so yeah, today will be a short reading, which is good because I'm late. So in our last chapter, we read all about, let's see, instructions and benedictions of Kuvera to Dhruva, and then Dhruva's glorious rule and renunciation. And Dhruva was endowed with all godly qualities. He was respectful to the Brahmins, kind to the poor. He's a protector of religious principles, and all the citizens considered him as a father. And he thus ruled over Bhul Mandal, this earth, for 36,000 years. And then after that, Dhruva, ruling over the world, he considered how the body, bodily relations, possessions, and kingly opulences will be affected by time, and he handed over the kingdom to his son, I think his son Utkal, and retired to Badarikashram. We're going to be hearing about Utkal today, yeah. And then Dhruva Maharaj ascends to Dhruva Loka, and by his constant bhakti, he experienced all these Ashtasattvic bhavs. And then Dhruva Maharaj saw a beautiful airplane coming down from the sky, illuminating all directions like the full moon. In that plane, Dhruva saw 2 chief associates of Lord Vishnu. Seeing them, Dhruva stood up, but being bewildered, he forgot to receive them properly, and he offered them respects simply by folding his hands and chanting the holy names. And then, Nanda and Sunanda, they speak to Dhruva, say many nice, sweet words, and then finally they get on their plane, and then Dhruva remembers his mother, and what about my mother? And they said, oh, she's already in another airplane. She's also on her way back to this holy abode. Then the glories of Dhruva Lok. That's what we read yesterday. And then Narad Muni, he glorifies Dhruva Maharaj. By his great austerities, Dhruva attained an exalted position, not possible to attain even for strict followers of the Vedas, and what to speak of ordinary kings. Note, they cannot even attain the method by which Dhruva attained the goal. What to speak of the goal itself? They can't even. Dhruva, aggrieved by his stepmother's harsh words, left for the forest at only 5 years of age, but he managed to conquer the unconquerable Lord with his devotional qualities. The position that Dhruva attained when he was 5 to 6 years old, in the duration of 6 months, cannot be attained by great Kshatriyas even after many years. And then here's the result of hearing the story of Dhruva Maharaj, which we've just gone through. Thus, I've explained the glorious life of Dhruva as asked by you. Great devotees very much like to hear about Dhruva. Wealth, fame, longevity, heaven, Dhruvalok, pure bhakti, greatness, good qualities, power, and respect. All sins and miseries will be diminished. These are the benefits of hearing about Dhruva Maharaj's, the narration of Dhruva Maharaj's story. Here are the ways of reciting the story. We recite the story with great attention and care in a society of Brahmins or other twice-born persons, like Vaishnavas who have taken Diksha, that's twice-born. Those who do not take any remuneration, by persons who have taken shelter of the Lord, and before a favorable audience. When to recite? In the morning and evening, during full moon, during the dark moon, on Dvadashi, the Shravan month, Kshaya days, Vyatipati days, at the end of a month, or on Sunday. What day is it today? It's Friday. Okay. Result of such chanting, both the reciter and audience will become perfect. Blessings of the demigods. Those who out of transcendental kindness give this immortal knowledge to the ignorant, they automatically gain the demigod's blessings. Conclusion. Thus, I have narrated the transcendental activities of the pure famous Dhruva, who as a child gave up home and toys to take shelter of Lord Vishnu. So now we're reading about the description of the descendants of Dhruva Maharaj. Let's let this begin. Where is it? Sutta Uvacha Nishamya Kosharavinno Pavarnitam Dhruvasya Vaikunta Padatirohanam Prarudabhavo Bhagavatya Doksaje Prashtum Punastam Vidura Prachakrame. Sutta Goswami, continuing to speak to all the rishis headed by Shaunak, said, oh wow, now we're back to Sutta Goswami. Remember, this is a conversation within a conversation within a conversation. Sutta Goswami speaking about Shukadeva Goswami, who's speaking about Maitreya and Vidura. So conversation within a conversation within a conversation. Sutta Goswami, continuing to speak to all the rishis headed by Shaunak, said, after hearing Maitreya Rishi describe Dhruva Maharaja's ascent to Vishnu's abode, Vidura became very much enlightened in devotional emotion, and he inquired from Maitreya as follows. Purport. As evidenced in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, as evidenced in the topics between Vidura and Maitreya, the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the devotees are so fascinating that neither the devotee who is describing them nor the devotee who is hearing is at all fatigued by the inquiries and answers. Transcendental subject matters is so nice that no one becomes tired of hearing or speaking. Others who are not devotees may think, how can people devote so much time simply to talks of God? But devotees are never satisfied or satiated in hearing and speaking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead or about his devotees. The more they hear and talk, the more they become enthusiastic to hear. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is simply repetition of 3 words, Hare, Krishna, and Ram. But still, devotees can go on chanting this Hare Krishna mantra 24 hours a day without feeling fatigued. Vidura Uvacha Kete Pracetaso Nama Kasya Patyani Suvrata Kasyan Vavaye Prakyata Kutra Va Satarmasata. Vidura inquired from Maitreya, O greatly advanced devotee, who were the Pracetās? To which family did they belong? Whose sons were they? And where did they perform the great sacrifices? Purport. The great Narad singing in the previous chapter of 3 verses in the sacrificial arena of the Pracetās gave another impetus to Vidura to ask further questions. Okay. Manye Mahabhagavatam Naradam Deva Darshanam Yena Prokta Kriya Yoga Paricharya Vidir Hare. Okay, so when Narad was, what we just read, when Narad was glorifying Dhruva Maharaj, he was doing so in the sacrificial arena of the Pracetās, I guess. That's such a bad memory. Vidura continued, I know that the great sage Narad is the greatest of all devotees. He has compiled the Pancharatric procedure of devotional service and has directly met the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. There are 2 different ways of approaching the Supreme Lord. One is called Bhagavat Marg, or the way of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and the other is called Pancharatrik Vidhi. Pancharatrik Vidhi is the method of temple worship, and Bhagavat Vidhi is the system of the 9 processes which begin with hearing and chanting. The Krishna consciousness movement accepts both processes simultaneously, and thus enables one to make steady progress on the path of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This Pancharatric Vidi procedure was first introduced by the great sage Narad, as referred to here by Vidura. So Dharma Shila Purusha Bhagavan Yagya Purusha Ejamano Bhakti Mata Naradene Rita Kila. While all the Pracetās were executing religious rituals and sacrificial ceremonies, and thus worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his satisfaction, the great sage Narad describes the transcendental qualities of Dhruva Maharaj. Purport. Narad Muni is always glorifying the pastimes of the Lord. In this verse we see that not only does he glorify the Lord, but he also likes to glorify the devotees of the Lord. The great sage Narad's mission is to broadcast the devotional service of the Lord. For this purpose, he has compiled the Narad Pancharatra, a directory of devotional service, so that devotees can always take information about how to execute devotional service, and thus engage 24 hours a day in performing sacrifices for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has created 4 orders of social life, namely Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. In the Narad Pancharatra, it is very, very clearly described how each of the social orders can please the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 18:45, it is stated, Swese karmanyapitara sangsiddhim labate nara. By executing one's prescribed duties, one can please the Supreme Lord. In the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.2.13, also it is stated, Svanustistasya dharmasya sangsiddhir haritoshanam. The perfection of duty is to see that by discharging one's specific duties, one satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the Pracetās were performing sacrifices according to this direction, Narad Muni was satisfied to see these activities, and he also wanted to glorify Dhruva Maharaj in that sacrificial arena. Yasta devarshina tatra varnita bhagavat katha mahyam shushushave brahmam kartsne na chashtumarhasi. My dear Brahman, how did Narad Muni glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And what pastimes are described in that meeting? I am very eager to hear of them. Kindly explain fully about the glorification of the Lord. Purport. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the record of Bhagavat Katha, topics about the pastimes of the Lord. What Vidura was anxious to hear from Maitreya, we can also hear 5,000 years later, provided we are very eager. It's okay, I'm not actually that tired to say Shri Mataji. Even though I'm yawning, I'm not like falling asleep. And once I do start really falling asleep, then I'll stand up for sure. Maitreya uvacha Dhruvasya chutkala putra pitari prasite vanam sarvabhauma shriyam naichar adirajasanam pitu. The great sage Maitreya replied, My dear Vidura, when Maharaj Dhruva departed for the forest, his son Utkala did not desire to accept the opulent throne of his father, which was meant for the ruler of all the lands of this planet. And Utkal, his headquarters was Utkal Desh, which is Orissa. Before Orissa used to be called Utkal. Shajanmano pashanatma nisanga samadarshana tadarsha loke vitatam atmanam lokamatmani. From his very birth, Utkala was fully satisfied and unattached to the world. He was equipoised, for he could see everything resting in the supersoul, and the supersoul present in everyone's heart. Purport. The symptoms and characteristics of Utkal, the son of Maharaj Dhruva, are those of a Mahabhagavat. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 6.30, Yomam pashati sarvatra sarvang cha mai pashyati. A highly advanced devotee sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead everywhere. and he also sees everything resting in the Supreme. It is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagad arvyakta murtina. Lord Krishna is spread all over the universe in his impersonal feature. Everything is resting on him, but that does not mean that everything is he himself. Everything is resting on him, but that doesn't mean that he is everything. A highly advanced Mahabhagavat devotee sees in this spirit. He sees the same Supersoul, Paramatma, existing within everyone's heart, regardless of discrimination based on the different material forms of living entities. He sees everyone as part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Mahabhagavat, who experiences the Supreme Godhead's presence everywhere, is never missing from the sight of the Supreme Lord, nor is the Supreme Lord ever lost from his sight. This is possible only when one is advanced in love of Godhead. Okay, there is a line missing here, so I need to find it. Database.io Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 4:13. What number is this? 8 to 9. Okay. Atmanam Brahma Nirvanam Pratyastamita Vigraham Avabodha Rasaikatmyam Anandam Anusantatam Avyavachina Yogagni Dagda Karma Malashaya Swarupa Avarudhano Natmanyam Tadaikshata Natmanonyam Tadaikshata. By expansion of his knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, he had already attained liberation from the bondage of the body. This is talking about Utkal. This liberation is known as Nirvana. He was situated in transcendental bliss, and he continued always in that blissful existence, which expanded more and more. This was possible for him by continual practice of bhakti yoga, which is compared to fire because it burns away all dirty material things. He was always situated in his constitutional position of self-realization, and he could not see anything else but the Supreme Lord, and he himself engaged in discharging devotional service. Purport. These two verses explain the verse in the Bhagavad Gita 18:54. Brahma Buddha Prasanatma na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mar bhaktim labate param. One who is transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state, he achieves pure devotional service unto me. This is also explained by Lord Chaitanya in a Shikshashtak in the beginning of the first verse. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvarpanam shreyakai ravachandrika vitaranam vidyavadu jivanam. The Bhakti Yoga system is the topmost system, and in this system, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the foremost performance of devotional service. By chanting the holy name, one can attain the perfection of nirvana, or liberation from material existence, and so increase one's blissful life of spiritual existence as described by Lord Chaitanya, Anandam Bodhivardhanam. When one is situated in that position, he no longer has any interest in material opulence or even a royal throne and sovereignty over the whole planet. This situation is called Viraktir Anyatrasyat. It is the result of devotional service. The more one makes advancement in devotional service, the more one becomes detached from material opulence and material activity. This is the spiritual nature, full of bliss. This is also described in Bhagavad Gita 2:59. Param drishtra nivartante. One ceases to take part in material enjoyment upon tasting superior blissful life and spiritual existence. By advancing in spiritual knowledge, which is considered to be like a blazing fire, All material desires are burned to ashes. The perfection of mystic yoga is possible when one is continuously in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by discharging devotional service. A devotee is always thinking of the Supreme Person at every step of his life. Every conditioned soul is full of the reactions of his past life. But all dirty things are immediately burned to ashes if one simply executes devotional service. This is described in the Narad Pancharatra, Sarvapadi Vinirmuktam Tat Paratvena Nirmalam. Jaranda Bahironmata Mukha Krite Ratanmati Lakshita Patipalanam Prashantar Chir Ivanala. Utkal appeared to the less intelligent persons on the road to be foolish, blind, dumb, deaf, and mad, although actually he was not so. He remains like fire covered with ashes, without blazing flames. This is interesting, huh? Purport. In order to avoid contradiction, botheration, and unfavorable situations created by materialistic persons, a greatly saintly person like Jad Bharat or Utkal remains silent. The less intelligent consider such saintly persons to be mad, deaf, or dumb. Factually, an advanced devotee avoids speaking with persons who are not in devotional life. But to those who are in devotional life, he speaks in friendship, and he speaks to the innocent for their enlightenment. For all practical purposes, the whole world is full of non-devotees, and so one kind of very advanced devotee is called a bhajananandi. Those who are goshtanandi, however, preach to increase the number of devotees. But even such preachers also avoid opposing elements who are unfavorably disposed towards spiritual life. Matvaitang jaramut unmattam kulavreda samantrina vatsaram pupatim chakrur yaviyangsham brahme sutam. For this reason, the ministers and all the elderly members of the family thought Utkal to be without intelligence, and in fact, mad. Thus his younger brother named Vatsar, the son of Brahmi, was elevated to the royal throne, and he became king of the world. Oh yeah, because Utkal is the son of Dhruva Maharaj and the daughter of Vayu. I think her name was Ila. And so then Utkal gave it to his half-brother, younger brother, named Vatsar, who was the son of Brahmi. Okay. Purport. It appears that although there was monarchy, it was not at all an autocracy. Those were senior family members and ministers who could make changes and elect the proper person to the throne, although the throne could be occupied only by the royal family. In modern days also, wherever there is monarchy, sometimes the ministers and elderly members of the family select one member from the royal family to occupy the throne in preference to another. It's autocracy, right? Autocracy. I don't know. I said autocracy. Autocracy. Lots of times I'm used to reading words rather than speaking them or hearing them, and so I know what the words mean, but I just don't know how to pronounce it. But I know autocracy, of course. Svarvitir vatsarasyeshta Bharyasuta Sharatmajan Pushparnam Tigmaketum Cha Isham Urjam Vasunjayam. King Vatsar had a very dear wife, whose name was Sarviti, and she gave birth to 6 sons, named Pushparna, Tigmaketu, Isha, Urja, Vasu, and Jai. Purport. Vatsar's wife is mentioned here as Ishta, which means worshipable. In other words, it appears that Vatsar's wife had all good qualities. For example, she was always very faithful and obedient and affectionate to her husband. She had all good qualities for managing household affairs. If both the husband and wife are endowed with good qualities and live peacefully, then nice children take birth, and thus the whole family is happy and prosperous. Pushparnasya prabhabharya dosha chadve babhuvatu pratar madhyantinam sayam iti yasan prabhasuta. Pushparna had two wives named Prabha and Dosha. Prabha had 3 sons named Pratar, Madhyandinam, and Sayam. Hey, that means Pratar means morning, Madhyandinam means midday, and Sayam means night. Interesting names, huh? Morning, noon, night. Pradosho nishito vyushta iti dosha sutastraya vyushta sutam pushkarinyam sarvate jasamadhate. Dosha had 3 sons, Pradosh, Nishita, and Vyushta. Vyushta's wife was named Pushkarini, and she gave birth to a very powerful son named Sarvateja. Sa chakshu sutamakutyam patyam manum avaptaha manor asutamahishi virajanadvala sutan purum kutsam tritam dyumnam satyavantam ritam vratam agnishtomam atiratram pradyumnam shibim ulmukam. Sarvateja's wife, Akuti, gave birth to a son named Chakshusha, who became the 6th Manu at the end of the Manu millennium. Nadvala, the wife of Chakshusha Manu, gave birth to the following faultless sons: Puru, Kutsa, Trita, Dhumna, Satyavan, Rita, Vrata, Agnishtoma, Atiratra, Pradyumna, Shibi, and Ulmuka. Ulmuko janayat putran pushkarinyam sharutamam angam sumanasam kyatim kratum agni rasam gayam. Of the 12 sons, Ulmuka begot 6 sons and his wife Pushkarini. They were all very good sons, and their names were Anga, Sumana, Kyati, Kratu, Angira, and Gaya. Sunitangasya pyapatni sushruve Vena mulbanam yadoshilyat sarajarshir nirvina niragat purat. The wife of Anga, Sunita, gave birth to a son named Vena, who was very crooked. The saintly King Anga was very disappointed with Vena's bad character, and he left home and kingdom and went out to the forest. Wow, so bad that his father just left everything. There's a verse missing here, so 1920. I mean, a line missing. 1920. Yamanga Shepukupita Vagvajra Munayakila Katasos Tasya Bhuyaste Mamantur Dakshinam Karam Arajake Tadaloke Dasyubi Pidita Praja Jata Narayanangshena Pratur Adyakshitishvara. My dear Vidura, when the sages curse, Their words are as invincible as a thunderbolt. Thus, when they cursed King Vena out of anger, he died. After his death, since there was no king, all the rogues and thieves flourished. The kingdom became unregulated, and all the citizens suffered greatly. On seeing this, the great sages took the right hand of Vena as a churning rod, and as a result of their churning, Lord Vishnu, in his partial representation, made his advent as King Prithu, the original emperor of the Lord. How do they churn a hand? They churned his hand like a churning rod. I'm so curious what that looks like. Purport. Monarchy is better than democracy. Because the monarchy is very strong, the regulative principles within the kingdom are upheld very nicely. Even 100 years ago in the state of Kashmir in India, the king was so strong that if a thief were arrested in his kingdom and brought before him, the king would immediately chop off the hands of the thief. As a result of this severe punishment, there were practically no theft cases within the kingdom. Even if someone left something on the street, no one would touch it. The rule was that the things could be taken away only by the proprietor and that no one else would touch them. In the so-called democracy, wherever there is a theft case, the police come and take note of the case. But generally, the thief is never caught, nor is any punishment offered to him. As a result of incapable government, at the present moment, thieves, rogues, and cheaters are very prominent all over the world. We're nearly finished. Vidura uvacha tasya shila nidessador brahmanyasya mahatmana ragya katam abudushta prajayar vimanayayo. Vidura inquired from the sage Maitreya, "My dear Brahman, King Anga was very gentle. He had a high character and was a saintly personality and lover of Brahminical culture. How is it that such a great soul got a bad son like Vena, because of whom he became indifferent to his kingdom and left it?" Purport. In family life, a man is supposed to live happily with father, mother, wife, and children. But sometimes, under certain conditions, a father, mother, child, or wife becomes an enemy. It is said by Chanakya Pandit that a father is an enemy when he is too much in debt. A mother is an enemy if she marries for a second time. A wife is an enemy when she is very beautiful. And a son is an enemy when he is a foolish rascal. And this, sometimes Chanakya's words are just so, wow, okay. In this way, when a family member becomes an enemy, it is very difficult to live in family life or remain a householder. Generally, such situations occur in the material world. Therefore, according to Vedic culture, one has to take leave of his family members just after his 50th year, so that the balance of his family life may be completely devoted in search of Krishna consciousness. King Vangho Vena Uddishya Brahma Dandam Ayuyujan Dandavrata Dhare Ragi Munayo Dharmako Vida. Translation, Vidura also inquired, "How is it that the great sages who were completely conversant with religious principles desired to curse King Vena, who himself carried the rod of punishment, and thus awarded him the greatest punishment, Brahmashap?" Purport. It is understood that the king is able to give punishments to everyone, but in this case, it appears that the great sages punished him. The king must have done something very serious. Otherwise, how could the great sages, who were supposed to be the greatest and most tolerant, still punish him in spite of their elevated religious consciousness? It appears also that the king was not independent of the Brahminical culture. Above the king was the control of the Brahmins, and if needed, the Brahmins would dethrone the king or kill him, not with any weapon, but with the mantra of a Brahma shap. Shap means curse. The Brahmins were so powerful that simply by their cursing, one would immediately die. Navadeya prajapala prajabhir agavanapi yaraso lokapalanam bibhartyo jasvatejasa. It is the duty of all citizens in a state never to insult the king, even though he sometimes appears to have done something very sinful. Because of his prowess, the king is always more influential than all other ruling chiefs. Purport. According to Vedic civilization, the king is supposed to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is called the Nara Narayan, indicating that Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in human society as the king. It is etiquette that neither a Brahmin nor a Kshatriya king is ever insulted by the citizens. Even though a king appears to be sinful, the citizens should not insult him. But in the case of Vena, it appears that he was cursed by the Nara Devatas. Therefore, it was concluded that his sinful activities were very grievous. Etarakyahime brahmam sunitatmajam chestitam shradhanaya bhaktaya tampara varavitama. Vidura requested Maitreya, "My dear Brahman, you are well conversant with all subjects, both past and future. Therefore, I wish to hear from you all the activities of King Vena. I am your faithful devotee, so please explain this." Purport. Vidura accepted Maitreya as his spiritual master. A disciple always inquires from the spiritual master, and the spiritual master answers the question. He answers the question, provided the disciple is very gentle and devoted. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said that by the mercy of the spiritual master, one is blessed with the mercy of the Supreme Lord. The spiritual master is not inclined to disclose all the secrets of transcendental science, unless the disciple is very submissive and devoted. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the process of receiving knowledge from the spiritual master entails submission, inquiry, and service. Pranipat, Pariprashna, Seva. All right, so tomorrow we are going to read Maitreya narrates events leading to Vena's birth. And Anga leaves home due to Vena's atrocities. And what? Yeah. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shishi Guru Garanga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtatara Shatashman Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Srila Gurudev Ki Jai Nityalupa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nityalupa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalupa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nityalupa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashatashmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalupa Vishnu Mahabhagavat Srila Gokshuras Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityalupa Vishnu Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nityalupa Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Pada Das Raghunath Shara Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shada Vrinda ki jai. Nam Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Braja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kun Shama Kun ki jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shinitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Gaur. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashaja Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams, Pradyumna Prabhu, Indira Mataji, Rup Manjari Didi, Madhavi Didi. Who else? I think that's mostly everybody. Haribo. Jai Shri Radhe. And tonight, I think I'll read an article by Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Gosai Maharaj. So you can read that. If you want to, you can join with that. Haribo. Oh, and Dandavat Pranams to Pradyumna Prabhu's mother. Haribo.